Okay, well, we're discussing all things non-league now, and I'm delighted to say joining us as ever to discuss everything non-league is Lewis Sale. Hi, Lewis.
Hi, Stephen.
Thanks for joining us. So we're going to focus on Bradford Park Avenue first. Now, last week you did say Avenue hadn't been getting what they deserved recently, but after beating Boston United 2-1 last time out, did they finally get what they deserved, Lewis?
I think on a whole, yes. I think for me it was a character that really stood out because the week prior to that we'd gone to Banbury away on a Tuesday night and lost in the 89th minute, and they looked heartbroken. We were heartbroken, those that made the trip. Um, and even on Saturday, to go 1-0 down, you just felt, here we go. It's going to be a real stretch for us to get something out of this game. But don't get me wrong. I think the first quarter of an hour, 20 minutes, we looked a little bit tired. We looked as if there was a little bit of hangover from that defeat against Banbury, which is to be expected. But yeah, Boston would argue probably had a bit more possession in the first half, had a couple more chances, but there wasn't much between the two teams. But we were so encouraged by what we saw, especially in the second half. I thought we were one of the best performances of the season that second half. We really took the game to Boston, and yeah, they might have a couple of players out injured, but the strength in depth that they're able to call upon, and the lone players have got a quality of this league. But we, we made our chances count, which for me has been a huge thing over the season. We don't get many chances, but when we do, we've got to take them, and when we do, we can match anybody, and we showed that against Boston at the weekend. And I think the encouraging thing for me is that there's been obviously there's people have their own opinions and stuff, but Bauer also got it absolutely spot on Saturdays. His substitutions all made a difference. Don't get me wrong, it was a little bit enforced with Lucas Dunstan, who came off, who for me is outstanding. And Hopper's come in, and Hopper's done a great job at right back as well. Blythe has come on, he scored a goal. Longbottom's come on and really, gave us balance and a bit of width, but a bit of creativity that we needed. And I think, yeah, we probably deserved at least a point. I wouldn't argue against the three either. And the encouraging thing again was, the tactical tweaks in that second half where we stretched the game, we opened up the wings a bit more. Lucas Dunstan especially, and Reece Staunton playing wing backs really kind of made the flanks a little bit more open, and it was the goals came from the width, and Boston just couldn't, in fairness, really deal with us, that kind of quality that we threw in the second half, and it was great to see. Like I say, especially after the previous loss, and those are the teams around us at the moment. With a great respect to Boston, I know they've been on a good run, but teams like that we have to win at home to stay up in this division. And we've beaten Hereford, we've beaten Blythe, we've beaten like I say, we beat Boston at the weekend, Curzon Ashton. So and we've got a run of games where it's going to be difficult, but on paper there are teams in and around us, and we've got to make it count.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned a Dunstan there. I mean, what a piece of skill, the nutmeg and the run to
Yeah,
set up the first goal. I mean, that is just top class, wasn't it? And the second goal as well. I
yeah.
love that header. He was not going to let the defender win that header, was he?
No, 100%. And for me, I don't want to shout about him too much because he's our player, and you don't want him to go somewhere else. But Lucas is such a good right back. I think he'd fit into a lot of teams in this division. And I think with his, he's still at a young age. He's missed 2 years of the season prior to last season through injuries. He's come through the academy set up at Hull as well, was really highly thought of. And we initially play in midfield, but his position is right back, and he's got the awareness to get other people out of trouble. But also, I think what he's learning now is that he has got the ability to take the ball forward. And I think when you're learning in the academies, it's quite easy to pass the ball between each other, and maybe have that style of football. But he's really good going forward, and he just needs to trust his own ability because, like you said, he's got that quality within him. He produced the assist on Saturday, and I'd love to see that more from him because he has got that in his locker, and from a take on a defender. But not only that, but have that final product of the cross as well. And you can argue the same with Reece as well. Reece has, really improved in this past month. I think when he first joined, he struggled. I'll be honest, I think he was finding it a little bit tough to kind of deal with the league and play week in, week out, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday. But now he's looking like one of our better players, and his delivery was just exceptional. It was just on point. And again, I said it after the game in midweek, and through the week as well, is that the assists are only good as that final finish, and Ringo was there to finish off first, and so was Jacob for the second. So yeah, really encouraging from both players on the wings to make them chances and ultimately, get us a win.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Moving to matters off the pitch, then interesting update from the boardroom today. Then couple of things that have been talked about. The 3G pitch has been professionally tested and approved up to Football League standards. However, the Football League insists it's still going to be on grass pitches, and they're saying this is hindering potential commercial growth. You've got to have sympathy, haven't you, really? Because obviously in a club like Bradford Park Avenue's situation, you need to maximise your revenue streams, don't you? And it does just feel like, come on, help the team survive a little bit.
And I think that's why we've had the pitch laid as we have done, and it's a stunning surface when it's played right. Don't get me wrong, when it's dry and it's in summer, it can be tricky because it can be quite sticky, but at this time of year when it's the ball can really zip off if you've got a little bit of a tiny bit of rain, a bit of drizzle through the day. It really changes the surface and how you play with it. Like you say, off the field commercially, it's a big thing for the club. And I know that obviously the pitch is hired out to academies from local areas as well, and people can hire it for a certain amount of time, whether it's five-a-side and stuff like that. So it's got to be a real plus for the club and the stadium as well in itself to create that revenue really to put back into the team to maintain it as well. And I think we've got to use it as a football club to our advantage because we are one of the few teams that do have it. Like to Gloucester have it as well. But I think teams are kind of getting used to it. They train on it midweek as well. So the advantage is probably not as strong as what it would have been. But the club needs to maximise everything they can out of it to hopefully either invest in the stadium itself or back into the first team. And ultimately, that's where we want to be as a football club, to be successful and do as well as we possibly can. You only have to look it down the road at Harrogate. They're one of the first ones that put the 3G pitches down and look at where they are now. Yes, we've had to take it up and put grass down, but it's ultimately it's been a step for them to get into the Football League. And listen, I'm not saying we're going to get there in 2-3 years' time, but it's the example that Harrogate have shown to a lot of other clubs around us is that it can be done, and done in the right way, and it can be successful both on and off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentioning income as well, it's mentioned in this kind of short statement, I guess you'd call it, or blog, that they're still waiting for the National League to distribute the funds that have been given by the Premier League as well to share amongst the clubs. And also they're waiting for BT to get their heads together about what they're going to do about streaming games. So it's good that this stuff is in the pipeline, but obviously you'd hope that it gets sorted out pretty quickly, wouldn't you? Because it's, clubs like Avenue need that.
Yeah, and I think as well, what we've got to be really conscious of is that we've got to stay in this division to make sure that we're getting these, grants and funds coming in because, you can potentially get them this season and the season past, but when you start going down the leagues, you kind of lose a little bit that coverage and some funds that might come your way. So, and I mentioned this in last week's podcast, it is so important to remain in this league, and I mentioned it to some of the board ironically on Saturday that some of the stuff off the field and the academy's doing great and that's really encouraging, but people come to watch your first team win a game on a Saturday at 3 o'clock, and that's how at the moment that's where your crowd's coming, and you've got to make sure that you've got a product on the field to keep attracting people to come back. And we know that it's going to be a challenge to stay in this division. We're capable of doing it, but there's got to be a real focus on making sure that that first team and Mark and Danny are supported in the right way, in a sustainable way, but done in the right way, to make sure they've got all the tools and resources available to get the best out of it. Because, Mark and Danny are one of the best management duos in this league. I still stand by it. People might disagree, but from what they've done over the past few years and in the past, especially with ourselves and the guys, they're capable of getting the best out of teams. And, they've got to have what they possibly can, that's affordable for them to do as they wish and make sure that that we are challenging at the right end of the table rather than, every season potentially looking at a relegation battle, which, and over the past few years has kind of been the case, which has been unfortunate. And, when the season got, null and void and we were at the bottom of the league and, we knew that, 2-3 years down the line, it was going to be difficult to get up towards the playoffs from what we were originally with Mark and Danny. And, all the support they can get is obviously going to be appreciated by them, but I think by fans and people who come, maybe once, twice, and then realise that actually there's a product there to come and watch. And we've seen examples of people come and watch us and have been encouraged by what they've seen of the like the hospitality, the food, etc., and also watching us win is a massive thing. And whether you're a young child with a family or whether you're 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, it's a good day out, and you've got to have the right product on and off the field.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So looking ahead then, a couple of games in close succession. It's Buxton on Saturday. They've got 3 games in hand. They're only a couple of places above Avenue, but them and Telford, is it a chance to get 6 points, do we think?
Hopefully. You'd hope so. I think it's going to be a really challenge. It's going to be another challenging one, but it's going to be interesting to see how Buxton go, because obviously last Sunday they were in the FA Cup against Ipswich Town, which is just a magnificent one, achievement for them, flying the National League North flag, and ultimately they got defeated, but it looked like they took 500 fans, and they've got praised by Ipswich, and they've not been disgraced at all in that. But obviously for them that cup runs over, and it's now back to reality. And one week you're playing Ipswich Town, and next, with great respect, you're playing Bradford Park Avenue. It's quite a step. So I think again they're playing an artificial surface as well. So there's, in terms of that advantage that your home team might have, they're not going to have that against us. And we've got to be really confident after what we've produced on Saturday. And it's not an excuse, but it's going to be interesting to see how you kick off at 12:30. How does that affect players? You're setting off at 12 o'clock, and instead of players are having to almost you're taking 3 hours probably back, and you're setting off at 9, 10 o'clock to prepare and get ready. So it'd be a challenge, but it's one that I don't think we can be scared of. I think the game on Monday night against Telford's huge. I think it's massive. Obviously, at the moment, Telford are struggling towards the bottom of the league, but there's got to be a time when they're going to pick up some results. They've changed manager recently. I know they've announced a squad update in the midweek, and they've got Gibson coming back as well as a striker. So, listen, they've got to come good at some point in terms of getting wins and not be consistently losing. But again,
drift, aren't they, at the moment? I mean, they're 7 points, aren't they? So they're miles behind at the moment.
Yeah, and you look at some of the comments from some of the fans, and they're not happy with the situation at the moment, which you can completely understand when, like you said, at the moment they are adrift at the bottom of the league. But we were at the beginning of the season, and it took us 3 wins, and we were back out of it. And Telford do have quality within the squad, but it is a huge challenge for Kevin Wilkin, who's been there and done it with Bradford, to get them out of that situation. And I think, from our perspective, selfishly at Avenue, you've got to be looking at that, and you've got to be hopefully getting that 3 points, because, again, like I mentioned earlier, you beat the teams around you, you give yourself a chance of staying up. And without any disrespect for Telford, it's one that we should be hopefully looking at and getting 3 points, because if you lose that, it kind of makes the work you've done against Boston, it's redundant, really.
Absolutely. Moving on to Farsley then, not played for a couple of weeks, and I know you did mention this last week, but interesting game for them. They've got Peterborough Sports, who have been a bit of a surprise package themselves and are absolutely flying at the moment, aren't they?
Yeah, massive. It's going to be a really tough fixture for them. Like I say, can't say much more than what I said last week about Peterborough being a real surprise package. I think they've surprised a lot of people. They've probably not really surprised themselves, if I'm being honest. I think they've really gone through this pyramid at the moment for the past 4 or 5 years, and they've been so successful, and I think you could almost write a film about them. And I think they've progressed so much. We played them at Horsfall, and they deservedly beat us. They were by far the better team. Really impressed by the pace that we've got on the counter attack and getting through the line. So it's going to be a real tough one for Farsley to go to, but I think it's for Russ's team. Hopefully they'll have a few players back for themselves as well to make that trip, but also just to get back into playing games. Like I say, not playing for a week or two is a challenge in itself, and to get back up to momentum. And like I say, you can't play catch up in this league. It's just impossible to do that. So I think Farsley, will be looking to get something out of that game. They've definitely got the quality to do it. It's just, have they got that strength in depth to do that? And they showed against Avenue in the FA Trophy. They've definitely got that with the likes of Ubanese up front. If they can do it, it's just they've got to have a consistent run. And I think that's the thing with Farsley. You mention it, in every week chat, you almost have Farsley. They lose 2 or 3 games, and then next minute they pick out a win, and then they go and lose, 2 or 3 out of another win, and that's what keeps them, in and amongst it, really, to stay in this division. but it's one I think that it's going to be a long trip and a challenge for him. But again, wouldn't surprise you if Farsley came away with a result at all.
Good stuff. Dropping down the league then, and we're going to take a look at Guiseley. And we had a big discussion on last week's show about Guiseley, and it's a real difficult time for the club at the moment. And we will get to their big announcement that they made the other day, but they lost to Liversedge 2-1. Bit of a definitely a poor result for Guiseley. And obviously, they had the interim manager Danny Forrest in charge. He's now left. And it's Paul Phillips who's been announced as their new first team manager. Obviously, a very experienced manager, and a lot of positivity in terms of the reaction from Guiseley supporters. Do you feel that that's a real step in the right direction for Guiseley? What will he bring to them?
To me, to use an analogy, it's like that situation when you get your headphones and it's like, why is it all tangled up? And how quickly can you unravel that to make it working again? And I think that's where I am at the moment with Guiseley. I think, listen, there's a lot going on, and where do you start with it? I think first of all, I don't think Danny Ellis was doing too a bad job. I can understand from the outside looking in. I know I listened to it last week. You were saying the same, but from the outside looking in, the kind of hovering mid-table, lower mid-table. So from that aspect, you're looking, you're going, okay, fair enough. But he's also, he's still kind of been building his squad. They've not had bad results since he had a settled squad. And I think we've been saying it over the past, month really. Now he's had a settled squad. They're capable of beating a lot of teams in this division. I went to watch them at FC United in Manchester do a superb for that division, for that level. They were really good. And at the time, FC United were at top of the league. And, it must have been a tough one for Danny Ellis to take, especially now he had a squad that he settled in. Like you say, the past week or two is just, like I say, what do you say? And I think, like I say, it was almost that loss at Liversedge was, I'm not saying to be expected is probably not the right saying, but you could see that it was, it wouldn't be surprised if that happened, and obviously it did. And I think especially when one, it's against your local rivals, and two, Liversedge hadn't won at home prior to that. And it's, you can almost throw in a third point is, how quickly has Danny Forrest had time with the players after the short turnaround? And, it's a really tough one to take. And it's almost like now you draw the line and you've got to somehow move on, which is tricky. And again, back to the analogy, you kind of unpicking a few knots, and now, it's almost you're nearly there and you can start afresh. But, Phillips has got a good record about himself in his division. Matlock, Buxton, Ashton United, he's been there and done it. He's got teams, arguably from the lower end of the table back up to the playoffs. So he's got the track record of doing it. The interesting part of it for me, again, when you look at it, is, is he able to bring players in? Because it's going to be another change of a squad. Like, it's taken Danny Ellis, since he joined, really, as manager, to put that team together. Is Paul Phillips going to want them players? Is he going to want to bring his own players in? Again, you look at it, Adam Yates has come in, worked for him at Matlock. Adam Yates has been one of the legends at Matlock for years and years, and now he's at Guiseley. And now Paul Phillips has joined. You start, you put one and one together, don't you? And sometimes you can get two. It's going to be interesting. Whenever I've seen Paul Phillips' side have been, pretty tough and aggressive, and and on the front foot. Like I say, can he get the players in to do that job? If you're going to appoint a manager, you've got to back him to possibly do that. And again, how long does that take for the squad to either settle down, to get near enough what he wants to do for this season, and then build for next season and beyond? And yeah, it's really interesting time at Guys. And like I say, they've got obviously the games coming up, or 2 games in 3 days again. So, and the interesting point is, people have got their own opinions about what's happened recently. Phillips is coming into this with, questions being asked from outside, and he's got to have a really good start, because if he doesn't win in the first 2 or 3 games, the comments and opinions are still going to, be put out there, if it's social media or at games, etc. And that's not really his fault, because he's got a job to do and get the team winning as soon as he possibly can. And it is a results-based business, but when people have got kind of opinions of what's happening this past few weeks, that's going to be hard. And the only thing that you can possibly do to quiet some of that down is win games, and it's got to start as soon as possible.
Is it a little warning as a Bradford Park Avenue fan, if you slip down that division, that it doesn't mean automatically you're going to jump straight back up, because obviously the budgets are spread quite evenly and you'll get your occasional team who've got bigger budgets. And like you say, if you lose those income streams from the above division, does it kind of, watching the club that's so close by struggle in the league below, does it make you think, oh, God, don't happen to us?
I think you're looking over your shoulder, and like I mentioned earlier, the past few years, that's a battle that likes of Avenue and Farsley have been in, and you're always thinking potentially, what if that could happen? And relegation's never good. Despite what sometimes people say, you might take a step back to go 2 steps forward. And for me, recently, the only example I can really think of is Altrincham, and that was 5-6 years ago, where they did, they got relegated from the National League North down to the NPL from here, and then look at where they are now. They're now a full-time National League outfit, and have got plans to improve things both on and off a field. So, yeah, I mean, you're always thinking that relegation can't really be good for you. And I think Guiseley finding that out at the moment, and ironically, Guiseley were minutes away from staying in this division. They weren't set aside, and obviously they've backed Marcus and Russ in there. They made that change late in the season. Brought Steve Kittrick along, and Steve nearly kept them up, but again failed on the last day, unfortunately. And look at where they are now. You wouldn't expect to see where they are, but I still say this: that the league is so tight. It's been tight for the past, since it started, really. And the only team that does really have games down at the top, but are not winning every week, is South Shields, who were full time. But you only have to look at them midweek. They lost, at home as well, with one of the games in hand. So it's not a disaster for guys. It's easy. Easy is not the right word, but they are capable of getting into them playoff places with the quality that they have. It's how quickly can they do it with a new manager and his own ideas to come into that, with players who might fit in or not fit in with his plans. And there's going to be, I think there will be a shuffle about, but it's got to be done sooner rather than later, and make sure, like I said earlier, you've got to get wins as soon as you can, because as close as it is now, in the next 2 months after the Christmas period, it's probably not going to be as close. So you've got to be giving yourself a fighting chance in that almost top 10, top 12. And then you've got another three months to make that final push.
And it could be the perfect game for them. First up, it's Morpeth Town. They've lost the last 4 games in the league. They're just a few places above Guiseley. Guiseley could leapfrog them if they beat them. So it feels like a good game to possibly start a new reign, doesn't it?
It's a winnable game. Morpeth are a good team. I've watched them a couple of times. They're not a bad outfit. I expect them to probably be higher up the table, if I'm being honest. But like you say, when you look at it in form-wise, Morpeth haven't done right well in the past few weeks. So it's an opportunity for Paul Phillips and the rest of the team to get 3 points out from. But like I say, I don't think what's happened in the past couple of weeks won't be forgotten if they win. It might dilute some opinions a little bit more. But I think you're exactly spot on with your analysis of that. I think it's a good opportunity for them to get something out of the game. And 3 points is really needed at the moment, to just, like I said earlier, kind of draw the line a little bit, start afresh and move on from what's been a difficult few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Elsewhere in that division, then Liversedge, just a few places below Guiseley. They're interesting in Liversedge. They do get these occasional wins that just about keep them in that pack, just in that relegation zone. But I mean, they're there at 21st at the moment. They've got a game in hand. They have got a winnable game against Whitby, would you say, or just a few places above them?
It's a huge game, a massive game, especially we've got to follow on from that victory against Guiseley. We'll have confidence because, finally that's been broken in terms of the home record. It's bound to hang over any team that you've got, especially when they've been so strong in years gone by. I think they were unbeaten pretty much for two years at Claiborne, and then to not win at all since the promotion, there must have been it's a bit like, oh, what do we do? Because we're not used to that situation. So I think now they've got that win, they've got to follow it up against a team in and around them. And then, like I say, they've got a trip on Tuesday night, I believe, to Mask as well, who, I've got a new manager, Curtis Woodhouse, who's got his own ideas. I do watch him on social media because he's pretty opinionated about how he wants his football team to play. I saw his interview. So that's going to be a real challenge for him again. But again, teams in and around you've just got to somehow get results, and whether it's a win on Saturday and a draw away from home is near enough perfect for Sedge, but they need to keep that momentum going, because once you start getting a bit of run of games, a bit of confidence, Liversedge have got the quality. I've said that for countless weeks. They've got a real good squad there, and they just need to go on a run, because I think again when they go on a run, they're known from, especially last season, they can pretty much go unbeaten. I'm not saying they're going to go unbeaten for the rest of the season, but they've got the quality in that team to really get themselves out of trouble. And it kind of parallels with Guiseley. They've got the quality to do it. They just need to be consistent and do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just before we let you go, Lewis, quick word on England and their World Cup exploits so far. They're out of the group. It's a big game on Sunday against Senegal. How do you assess how they've performed so far, and how do you think they'll do in the rest of the tournament?
I'm not just saying it because I'm on the podcast, but I think it's been a really good qualifying group for us. I really do. I think obviously the first game against Iran was, we were patient and we took our chances. And I think the only disappointing aspect was to concede 2 goals. I thought we were excellent. We were clinical. We were in control of the game. And I think also encouraging we spread out the goals, which is a massive bonus for us. And I know people have said it, but Jude Bellingham was just exceptional. And for me, he's our player of the tournament so far. I think he's a bit of a Rolls Royce of a player. I think, he's at a top club already, but he can only get better. Can that kid? He's just unbelievable to watch. I think the game against USA, people were, in some respects had a little bit of rationale to kind of go in that thinking we were going to win, but you know better than me, being a Leeds fan with the Leeds connections. They're an athletic team. They're going to pressure hard. That was never going to be an easy game, and don't get me wrong, it was disappointing. But when you sit back and reflect, and you're thinking, what, we didn't play badly, but we haven't lost, and I think that was a big thing. And for me, I know people sometimes will question the substitutions, but I think he got them spot on. Personally, I think Henderson needed to come in just to settle it down a little bit. He's got that, a bit of aggression, just a bit of leadership in there that we probably needed at the time. I think Rashford and Grealish made a difference when they came on to a certain extent. Again, the game could have been completely different if Harry Kane's chance hadn't got blocked in the first 5 minutes. And I think people almost forget that chance where we didn't have many thereafter. But that chance, if that goes in and you're 1-0 up in a big deciding game, it can change the course of that. But I thought 0-0 was fair. USA could have won, but I think on the whole, I think it was a pretty fair result. I mean, you move on to one against Wales, and it's always good to beat your local rivals, isn't it? And I think the way that we did it was lovely to do. It was lovely to do, and I think for me, we were in control from the first to the last minute. I thought some of the stuff we played in the first half. Don't get me wrong, we didn't have a lot of clear-cut chances. Again, Rashford just missed a one-on-one with Danny Ward early on, similar to Kane at USA. But I thought we played some outstanding stuff. I think there were a couple of moves in that first half were just a joy. I think there was one that we came back from, I think Kyle Walker on that right-hand side, and it was pretty much a one-touch play. It was just stunning to watch. I mean, I think because of the hard work we'd done in that first half, gave us that reward in that second. And, no disrespect to Wales, but we just couldn't handle us, I don't think, in that second half. And it wouldn't, to me, I think 3-0, it could have been 4 or 5. And I think the encouraging thing was you kept a clean sheet. We managed to rest key players. We've not picked up any extra bookings. We've not picked up any extra injuries either. Against Senegal, who we've not played, they're missing Sadio Mane. They're going to miss Idrissa Gueye as well. We've got to be confident going into that, and I think for the rest of the time, we've got nobody to fear. And I know that potentially you can play France, but I don't think we can fear France either. They should be also just as scared of us as what we might be of them. And we've got to get through this, real tough game against Senegal. And, there's potential that we could go a long way in this tournament. But knockout football, as we all know, is a completely different game when your performances don't matter. It's all about result. Whereas I think the qualifying can be a little bit, you get your performances right and you make sure you do what you can do to get out of it. Now it's pure results based. Sometimes the best team on a day might not necessarily win. You've just got to do what you can do. And I think as the tournament goes on, we're probably going to have to win one penalty shootout. It might be Sunday. It might be, the game after. It's going to have to happen, I think, for us to win, to possibly go all the way. But I'm really encouraged by what we've done so far. I think it's been a real good opening start to the World Cup for us. And the way that we can play in the backup that we do have and a strength in depth. I don't think we've got anybody to fear. I don't. Sounds really optimistic, doesn't it?
I know, yeah, it's dangerous, always dangerous, isn't it?
I know.
Do you think Southgate, is he a bit unfairly criticised, would you say? Do you think he gets a bit hammered a little bit too much, do you think?
I can understand. This sounds a really diplomatic way of saying it. I can appreciate why people say what they say, but I'm a huge fan of him, and I said it from the moment it got appointed, and I've screenshotted it. Because if we win the World Cup, I will post it on social media what I said about Southgate, and I won't say it out loud yet. I'm waiting for it to happen. But don't get me wrong. Sometimes there's a few occasions you're thinking, let's just go for it a little bit more and be a little bit more attacking. But how can you argue with his tournament record in a moment? He's got us into a semi-final. He's got us to a final, and people say some buts, and you change your subs against Italy, we could have won it, but we lost the final on penalties. That wasn't. We didn't get defeated in 90 minutes against, at the time, one of the best teams in the world. So, and who's to argue with what we've done so far in this World Cup? Don't get me wrong. If we lose Sunday, it's going to be a whole different story. But that's the pressure you have as an international manager at that level. I personally think he's got it spot on at the moment. I think the biggest challenge is when you come up against the top teams around us, the likes of your France, your Spains, etc., Brazil, etc. Is what does he go to? Does he potentially go back to a back three with two wing backs? Does he keep his 4-4-2? But people were beginning of the tournament were saying we can't have five at the back. He hasn't played five at the back all yet. He hasn't done it. And at the moment, again, people are saying, "Oh, you got to play Maddison." Well, I know he's been injured, but I don't hear anything about Maddison. It's all about Foden, and well, Maddison could come on and change a game on Sunday. He could do it if we get through for the rest of the tournament. But sometimes I think people can be quick to judge, which is, again, understandable because it's such an emotive subject in game. But for me, he's been spot on. And I don't think if we potentially do get through the games and, you might play the likes of France, etc., and you get through to a semi-final, well, that's an achievement in itself to overcome a big team if we do. And I think people also, it's easy to forget we haven't won anything since '66. This isn't a team that's prolific in winning stuff. We're not. No. People sometimes put us in the same bracket the likes of Brazil and France. Well, we're not. And I think sometimes when you look at that, you're thinking actually we're not doing a bad job at all. And in my lifetime, I've always said it. I'm a passionate club supporter, but I had always wanted England to win the World Cup. That's my lifetime, my dream for it to happen. And with this group of players and way that we can do it, there's no reason why they can't. But we've just got to keep on doing what we're doing and do the right things. And like I say, don't fear anybody. They've got to start fearing us because we've got the potential to do it.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we're still in the World Cup next time we speak, Lewis. We'll
hopefully
see. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed.
If not, it's a completely different discussion.
Lewis, absolute pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to chatting to you again next week, mate.
You too, mate. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.